I've always been a highly creative person. Life for me has always been about creativity. I get such a rise out of making stuff. And likewise, I get so much enjoyment from experiencing beauty that inspires me to make new things. That's what I want to do with my life. That's basically all I want to do with my time. I think many creative people can relate to this perspective of life. If you're making something, then life feels good. But if your life circumstances get in the way of you being able to create like you want to, your soul starts to wither and die. Life loses its color. This is one of the struggles of being a creative person. If you have time and opportunity to make stuff, then life is good. But if you become burdened with all these obligations and you can't make stuff like you want to, then life can feel very dark. I talked about this recently in my video on the curse of creativity. And the basic way that curse is formulated usually is creative people can make just about anything except a living. The skill sets of monetizing your creative capacity are not always the same skills that creative people have. And this puts creative people in the situation where maybe they are abundantly creative. They have all kinds of beautiful ideas, but nobody seems to care about what they make enough to give them money for it. This is a dynamic that I am always wrestling with. It's like, on the one side, should I make things that appeal to my own heart? Or on the other side, should I use my head and make things that I know will appeal to people enough that they will pay me money for it? There's no easy answer for this. I think in the end, you just have to find that Venn diagram slice where you are appealing to your own heart enough and appealing to the sensibilities of your own mind enough that you can both create and start to make things that other people are interested in. I'm a creative person. You could even say I'm an abundantly creative person. As a writer, I've tapped into my own creative capacity enough that it's pretty effortless for me to churn out reams and reams of writing without much difficulty. But recently, I've recognized this problem that my creativity can't seem to solve. While I have no problem writing and editing and all the things involved in the creative process, I have a really hard time finishing things. Somehow my creative book projects never seem to end. There's always more to do. When I start out with a book project, in my mind, I think, well, I could do this in 6 months. I'm writing so many words. A book is only so long. So if I just keep at it, then surely it's going to be done in 6 months or so. But somehow, even with the abundance of words that I'm still continuing to churn out, the 6-month mark passes and I seem further away from the end of the book than I was a month before. I want to talk about this subject in this book. And the way I'm going to frame it is comparing creativity versus productivity. Productivity for me is a complicated word. I've got a really complex relationship with it. I go through these phases regularly where I'm super enthusiastic about productivity. I want to get more efficient. I want to write more, better. I want to work on my process so that I can create more stuff. But for me, usually if I'm getting really pumped up about productivity, that's a sign that burnout is not far away for me. I seem to start burning some limited resource when I get really enthusiastic about productivity. And eventually that kind of hustling mindset leads to me crashing and burning for a while. Now, I know at the core, productivity isn't the problem. It's good to be productive, right? But for whatever reason, my own relationship to productivity has some problems somewhere. Creativity, on the other hand, there's no problems with creativity. Creativity is divine. It's perfect. It's this capacity handed down by the gods into my own heart that has blessed me with an ability to see the magic in all of life and to somehow be able to express it out for everybody to enjoy. But is this really how it is with creativity and productivity? It's easy for me to look with suspicion on my relationship to productivity, but creativity, for some reason, I've always given it a hall pass. Creativity is just this good and undeniably pure quality to me. I would never hesitate to say that it's good to be creative. It's good to be more creative. It's good to always be creating. So I want to share with you some of the ways that I'm playing around with a new frame for both creativity and productivity that I think is already helping me in my own writing process. For example, this new perspective that I'm playing around with has helped me to write and publish a finished book in 3 weeks. This could not be more different than the work in progress that I've been banging my head against for 8 months. And don't get me wrong, I love this work in progress that I've been trying to make for 8 months. It's going to be a beautiful book, and sometimes beautiful things take time to flesh out and develop. But I'm starting to recognize that with this long book project that I'm still working on, I've been using my creativity as a kind of procrastination. Here's what I mean. I told you that for me, creativity comes really easy, and creativity is also very enjoyable to me. Fleshing out ideas, discovering new, beautiful connections, writing the first draft of incredibly original things that I think are beautiful. Man, that's the part of writing that I enjoy doing. Forget editing, forget making things coherent, forget communication. Man, I just want to brainstorm all day. It turns out that a lot of the components of the writing process that I find particularly uncomfortable sit at the end of the process. It's the editing stuff. It's recognizing things that aren't clear or good in my writing. And it's starting to anticipate the reception that my work is going to have. There's so many things at the end of the process that I find either uncomfortable or boring that I think subconsciously I sort of extend out the research and writing phase, not necessarily because the book will be that much better for all the extra research, but because I think I'm trying to find an excuse to kick the can on the things that I find really unpleasant about writing. So this leads me to a new definition of productivity that I'm playing with. The way I used to think of productivity in my mind was something like efficiency. It was honing all my creative time so I didn't waste anything. It was all useful. And that's all totally true. But for me, here's a little change in belief about productivity that has been a helpful psychological shift for me. Productivity is making a product. The name product is wedged right into the word productivity. It's creating a finished product. It's not necessarily a good product or a useful product, but nobody can deny it's done and it's a product. Viewing my creative process as making a product, for whatever reason, has disburdened me of a lot of weight over the past month. I don't know if this is going to work for anybody else, but here's what I think is going on in my case. I have this tendency, I think, to idealize unintentional creativity. It feels so good for me to make something, especially when I'm not burdened down by any of my complexes about creating. So it's natural that I would use this kind of unintentional creativity as a way to procrastinate and avoid those uncomfortable feelings that I usually associate with the other side of the creative process, the intentional stuff, the work. But when I reframe my creative time as making a product, what I'm doing is I'm still getting the joy and satisfaction of creating, but somehow I've targeted some of my complexes on the productivity end. It's just a product. I'm just making something. I'm not obsessively tied to needing to make a work that reflects myself perfectly and purely. Instead, I'm practicing the art that I say that I love, writing. This means I kind of get to have my cake and eat it too. During the writing process, I can dive deeply into the enjoyment of my own process. But then, when it becomes a product, all of a sudden it's separate from me in some way. That separation provides a lot of benefits. All of a sudden, it's something that others could criticize, and they aren't strictly criticizing me. Likewise, it's something that I could critique. I could look at this work in a disinterested way and say, well, how could I make this writing better? It's very difficult to cut up your writing when you're highly emotionally attached to it. But when it's a product of your creativity, then all of a sudden you can look at it with an editor's eye and say, oh, this could be so much better if I killed this darling. Disinterest is a word that gets a bad rap. For us, it basically means uninterested, like, I couldn't care less about it. But in reality, what disinterested means is you're no longer extricated with it emotionally. When you're disinterested, you're able to look at something and judge it truthfully. And this disinterest is an amazing gift for an artist. We want to make beautiful work. We want to make something as good as possible. We want to make something that reflects our inner experience as cleanly and coherently as possible. And a lot of times our emotional tangle with our actual work gets in the way of us making a good work. So this is why I like thinking in terms of products lately. It hasn't robbed the beauty for me of the actual creation process. In fact, I feel like I can give more attention to my work because I'm giving fewer attentions to my thoughts about my work. Does that make sense? It's like I can see what I'm making more intently because I'm spending less of my energy thinking, oh, what are people gonna think about this? What do I think about this? I really don't want to do this right now. If I'm just doing my thing as a writer today, sitting down and doing the craft, then I have more mental bandwidth to actually enjoy the things that I'm doing, even if on the surface they are unenjoyable activities like editing. And for me, this product mindset makes it easier for me to set a deadline for my work as well. It's like, well, this work doesn't need to be precious. I can set a 3-week limit to make this. I can write the best book that I can in 3 weeks or 3 months or whatever length of time, and then I can publish it, ship it out, and get to practice more of the practice of writing. Weirdly, this disinterest eventually will make me a much better writer because I'm getting more practice with every single stage of the writing process, rather than spending months and months on just the beginning phases of research and first draft. When you don't helicopter over the things you love, they have more opportunity to be whole. It's kind of like when you're in love with somebody. If you have this crush on someone and you're just obsessive about them, then odds are you're going to chase them away. You're not doing that relationship any favors by your obsession. If you could be a little disinterested, if you could just be cool about things, you'd have a much likelier chance of having a healthy relationship with this person that you admire. Likewise with kids, if you're hovering over your children all the time to make sure they never scrape their knee, they never do anything wrong, then maybe that will be a disservice to them as they get older. They'll grow up to be adults who are clumsy and want to do all the things they couldn't do when they were kids. Being able to emotionally detach from your creativity and view it as a product means that you're in a better place where you can work on it and make something better in the end. Thanks for watching, you guys. I mentioned I finished a book. That book's called ChatGPT for Authors. You can get it on Amazon, and basically I use ChatGPT all day, every day for my writing process. And this book outlines how I think you can use it in interesting ways in every single stage of the process. So check that out if you're interested, and have a good day.